Hello everyone, warm welcome. Nice to have you here back at Elle-Máijá. Nice to have you welcomed here again back in Berlin. We're kicking off now into the sessions. So this morning we started internally, and of course, speaking with all those 205 talents, that's already great. But we want to bring more people here because dreaming is something you shouldn't do alone. And I think also Berlinale and Talents stands for that we collaborate with people and that we bring in strong collaborators over the last 20 years. And this year we're starting with a new collaboration, and this collaboration brings us in touch with Array, and with Array's filmmaker Ava DuVernay, and we're very, very happy about that. So because Ava DuVernay's, I would even say media and narrative change powerhouse is something that is in both ways alike to what we are doing, but on the other side also challenging us to raise new questions with regards to representation, with regards to equality, and topics that are very, very important to us here and today. And today we thought to kick that off, we need to bring in people that have kind of a connection to both the Berlinale and to both of Array. Array is celebrating 10 years of anniversary already. We have 20 years here, and we have quite a lot of people in the network. And for this conversation, I will bring you in touch in a minute with 3 filmmakers who have been here at the Berlinale and also at Berlinale Talents partly. But before we do that, I want to bring in the moderator for today, because this is the first session where we also have someone like Jamila Granditz. And Jamila is here, brought to us from Vienna. Hi, nice to have you, Jamila. Can you hear us? That's great. Hopefully everyone can hear you.
I think you can hear me.
Now we can hear you. Yeah. Fantastic, fantastic. Jamila, and we have been working together quite a while already, so you've been here in the Heperi Theatre. So these are the 3. Thank you very much. Great to have you here. And I will only say a little bit about the 3 because they will introduce them nicely and much better than I could do it in the conversation that we are kicking off in the minute. On my side, on the low part, you can see Elle-Máijá Tailfeathers. She's an actress and filmmaker, and she's been with us at Berlinale Talents before. But also, of course, she's been here with us in the festival, and she's also this year in this year's festival in a film from Goulet and Panorama. On my upper right, we have Takeshi Fukunaga, who also have been in the Panorama, also have been at Berlinale Talents. And on the left side, on my part of least, is Heperi Mita, who has been in the Berlinale native section not very long ago, but with a film he will tell you more about. But without any further ado, what we do now is that we switch in a way and cross the pond, and we are joining Ava DuVernay in a recorded talk because Ava is shooting in the moment with the 3. And this will give you a chance to get to know them before Jamila is getting into conversation with them here live on this stage. Enjoy. Are we already on?
Friends, how are you? So for everyone who's watching, I'm Ava DuVernay. I'm a filmmaker and a distributor through a company called Array Releasing, and I've had the great honor, along with my colleague Tulane Jones, who's the president of Array, to distribute the work in the United States of these 3 extraordinary filmmakers. And I want you all to introduce yourselves and your latest film, because there are many in this group. But just your name and the film that we worked on together. We'll start with, I won't say ladies first. We'll do ladies last. Takeshi.
Okay, my name is Takeshi Fukunaga. I'm a filmmaker from Japan. But I was based in US for many years, and then my second feature, Animosier, was released by Array in 2020, last year. And I'm so happy to be here.
And you have long hair since the last time I saw you.
Well, yeah.
You're gonna have a ponytail in a second, Takeshi. I like it.
I don't know if I go that far, but we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. Heperi.
Hello, everybody, and as we say here in New Zealand, kia ora koutou katoa. My name is Heperi Mita, and I'm a filmmaker from New Zealand. I released a film in 2019 about my mother called Mita, How Mum Decolonized the Screen, which was proudly distributed by Array, and I'm very thankful for that opportunity. And I'm currently working on a few other projects, mostly as a writer. It's lovely to see you again, Ava. It's been a long time.
Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. The lady. I turn it over to you.
Elle-Máijá Tailfeathers. Hi, I'm Elle-Máijá Tailfeathers. Most people just call me Maya. I am Blackfoot from Ghana, or Kainai. It's in southern Alberta, Canada. And I'm also Sami from northern Norway. And I'm a filmmaker and actor. Array distributed our film, The Body Remembers When the World Broke Open, in 2019. And I'm also acting in a Canadian-New Zealand co-production called Night Raiders, which is premiering at Berlinale this year. And
wonderful.
It's an honor to be here, and I'm such a fan of everybody here.
It's a great, so have you all met? Do you all know each other outside of the Array connection?
Yes.
Everyone knows each other.
Takeshi doesn't remember.
Well, we have met, and she reminded me of that, and I'm happy.
Cross paths.
Yes, yes.
Good. Well,
and
so
where
no, go ahead, please.
No, we've known each other for quite some time, but I think maybe the strongest connection is actually through the Mita Fellowship, which was named in honor of my mum and features in my documentary, which Elle-Máijá was a recipient of.
Okay, this is the Sundance Fellowship, right? Out of Sundance,
that's the one.
Right? Wonderful. So many connections here, and so today I want to talk about our connections, the importance of connecting across culture, the importance of the vibrancy of independent film and how we preserve that, and also what those struggles are so we can identify them and try to cut through them. But I want to start with, so is everyone, where in the world is everyone right now? So what cities are we looking at right now? Elle-Máijá?
I'm in the unceded and ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, which is otherwise known as the city of Vancouver in Canada. It's just a few hours north of Seattle.
Got it. Wonderful. Takeshi, where are you?
I'm in Tokyo, Japan. I've just moved here last year after living in the US for the past 16 years.
Okay. All right. And where are you, Heperi?
I am in Auckland, New Zealand, on the land of the Ngāti Whātua iwi, also known as Tāmaki Makaurau.
This is an internet, listen, is this the sexiest panel you've ever been on? It's the sexiest panel I've ever been on. We're all together from all over the world through the magic of technology. I'm in Los Angeles, California in the United States, and I'm connected by technology, but also through love with all of these filmmakers. So I want to just talk a little bit about the process by which each of your films is, I feel deeply personal in ways that are very connected to identity, but to cultural identity. And want to talk a little bit about, your feeling about our films as people who are outside of the dominant culture in the United States anyway. do you feel any responsibility? Do you feel any special sense of purpose to make sure that your work is infused with a sense of that identity? Does that feel like a joy? Does it feel like a burden? Does it feel something that you, like something you embrace, or something that you've worked with and may want to put down? I've given you a lot of options, but I'm always interested in speaking with filmmakers like us who kind of work outside of the bubble of Hollywood to understand, what's your perspective? Who wants to start?
I don't mind starting, because I was just having a conversation about this with a friend of mine, and given that my work with Array is documentary, I mean, part of that, you know, I very much felt like carrying my cultural perspective and the intimacy involved within the documentary is a massive responsibility. Don't get me wrong, it is something that I definitely enjoy and I'm proud of, but at the same time, when you're sharing real people's lives and real people's stories with the masses, that comes with it, I think, a certain set of responsibilities that you need to take really seriously, because once the film is done, your work is done, but their lives still remain, you know, entrenched in the issues that you uncover through the work. And when you're dealing with, you know, I was dealing with my own family, and within New Zealand as Māori, you know, we are a minority, and when you're dealing with those types of issues and issues that are directly related to prejudice and race, I think that responsibility is increased almost tenfold, because, you know, I was uncovering a lot of trauma in my family due to historic events in this country that, you know, they were targeted because of, you know, my mum's work as a filmmaker and the impact that had on them. And so just in that, you know, you're not only unwrapping a lot of historical events, but you're also unwrapping your own family's history, you're unwrapping your own family's feelings about things. And you're also, you know, at the same time, you know, it was really important for me to remain respectful to my mum's memory, but also to be very truthful and very honest. And also, you know, even within her own culture, there were traditional beliefs that she butted heads up against, and to explore those types of issues. So it's really managing a lot of conversations and a lot of topics, and getting the best out of them, and most of all, making that a cinematic experience, yet at the same time, protecting the people that you love, protecting those who entrust their stories with you. And the main thing that I came away was with that sense of responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, great insight into that. Takeshi, how about you?
Yes, well, you know, I agree with Heperi on a lot of points, but also, you know, I guess like one thing I would say is that, you know, like since, you know, cinema is made for a wide audience, and if we are making something for a wide audience, I feel like, you know, why don't we try to go a little farther than just a pure entertainment? And, you know, for example, my second feature is about Indigenous Ainu people in my hometown, Hokkaido, Japan. And there hasn't been any film, a narrative film made about them, starring them. So, I mean, although there are few narrative films made about Ainu, but every time it was made, it was Japanese actors who were playing Ainu roles. And that's not acceptable in today's, standard. And so one of the biggest motivation for me was to make a good, better step, towards a better representation, not just Ainu, but other minorities in Japan. And, that's one of the biggest reasons why I made it. Although I'm a Japanese filmmaker, so I, try to be, careful and respectful to the people and how I portray them. So, so I, casted all the, Ainu non-professional actors, and they wrote the film based on, their real stories, and also asked them to be, free to say whatever they wanted to, as long as it stays on the, main story thread. And, it might haven't been the perfect film, but, I did my best to, first of all, of course, make a good film, but also, bring a, good impact on the society, because, it's, we are, there are so many wonderful things, but also there are so many issues, and then, we can, push it further to make a better world. And me as a filmmaker, I think that's you know what I can, you know, that's the best thing, you know, I can do, you know, just you know, as a filmmaker too. Yeah.
I love that. Don't be surprised if you're watching an interview with me and I steal. If we're making films for a wide audience, why don't we push it a little further? It's stolen. Consider it stolen. It's gone. I'm taking it. I'm going to say it more and more. It was a great way to think about it. Elle-Máijá, how about you? Responsibility, honor, joy, bummer?
All of those things. I think I really appreciate what both Heperi and Takeshi said. I've been making films for 10 years now, and I would say with my last two projects, The Body Remembers When the World Broke Open, and my narrative, or my documentary feature, which is going to premiere in a few months, I've really developed and refined a practice or a way of working that reflects narrative sovereignty. This idea of sovereignty as an action, as narrative sovereignty, meaning that we have control over our own stories as Indigenous people. Indigenous people have been misrepresented for so long on screen, especially here in North America. You know, Indigenous people were the first people to ever be documented by the moving picture, the moving image. So we have, you know, over 100 years of misrepresentation and appropriation and just really ugly stereotypes and erasure, quite frankly, of our people and our stories that we have to make up for. And so narrative sovereignty to me, first and foremost, means accountability to my communities, to my Blackfoot community, to my Sami community, and then more broadly to the Indigenous film community. And that community is very global, which is why, you know, Heperi and I have known each other for quite a while. And so it means creating work that is grounded in Blackfoot and Sami principles of working, of kinship, of honoring our worldviews and our protocols, and so that can be like really heavy. It can be like a really big responsibility to keep that in mind always. But I also think it's a really beautiful place to work from, to have a community that I'm accountable to know that I have my ancestors' support always, and that I have to always consider them and the future generations. And yeah, I think it's a really cool place to work from. With The Body Remembers, we made that film for an Indigenous audience first and foremost, and more specifically Indigenous women and Indigenous youth. And that film was an effort to make sure that Indigenous women and youth felt like their stories were being seen and heard in a very authentic way, and that our stories deserve space on screen. And so, yeah, again, that can be kind of a heavy responsibility, but I think it's also a really beautiful place to work from. And then there's kind of like this burden of, I guess, like education that comes when you have to tell stories for a non-Indigenous audience, which I'm just really tired of. So I've been trying to not think about that in my work. And it's really liberating just to think that I'm making this for my community. I'm making this for people who understand. And I don't have to kind of like babysit my audience or educate them along the way, because it can be so restricting and also really heavy, you know?
I know. I hear where you're coming from. Let's talk about your relationship to this convening. Your alumni of, and they're calling this Zoom that we're doing, it's called Dream On, which I really loved. So I want to ask you a little bit about, you know, your history as alumni, and then also to move your answer into a hybrid question, which is, what is the impact of dreaming on your work, right? So often I'm always asked about political issues and societal issues and racial issues and gender issues, but I'm rarely asked about my process, what I dream about making and how dreams inform my work and what I'm striving for outside of my political, racial, cultural, and gender identity, right? And so I want to ask you the question that I rarely get asked in that respect, but I want you to connect that a little bit to just sharing with folks, you know, what this convening, what this gathering, what being an alumni of this institution really, you know, means to you, what it's given you, and then tell me about the dreams. I'm gonna start with you, Elle-Máijá. We'll go backwards this time.
Well, yeah, I'm a Berlinale Talent Lab alumni, and that was one of the best experiences in my life.
What year was that?
2013, I think. But I have one regret, which is that I was like really, really jet lagged, and I slept through my alarm clock, and I missed Wong Kar-wai's visit.
Oh my goodness.
And he came and had this like intimate gathering with the talent lab, and I literally missed it, and I still keep myself. Yeah. But in terms of like dreaming and that concept in my work, I really appreciated what you said, Ava, about kind of this consistent burden of being asked about representation and heavy political issues and things like that. I think as an Indigenous person, it's almost inescapable, just given our reality, the fact that our land is occupied, and we're still living with the ongoing effects of settler colonialism and genocide. So it's inescapable. You know, like I checked the news this morning, and today in Canada is the sentencing hearing for a man who murdered an Indigenous woman by throwing a trailer hitch out of a moving vehicle at her, and her name was Barbara Kentner, and she died a very long, slow, and painful death. And today was the sentencing hearing for the man who murdered her. And so, you know, you wake up and that's what you read in the news every day, and that's just kind of the reality of being in this country and being an Indigenous person, and an Indigenous woman in particular. So in terms of like dreaming, I would love to be able, you know, I would love to see a future where we don't have to wake up to stories like that, and where we don't have to tell stories like that anymore, where it's not just like in the fabric of our everyday lived experience. I would love to be able to hire a fully Indigenous crew, like an Indigenous DP and a sound person, and have a, you know, wardrobe and set design, all of that be led by Indigenous people. We're not there yet. So I really want to see that. And I want to be able to make work that isn't rooted in a proximity to trauma and a proximity to settler colonialism and violence. I want to make work that my 6-year-old niece finds joy from, and hope, and all of that. So I think there's a lot there, but those are the things I dream of.
Those are good dreams. Good dreams. Takeshi, how about you? Talk to me a little bit about your alumni experience, your experience, and what are your film dreams?
Yeah, there's those are big questions. But first of all, like my alumni Berlinale and Talents experience was back in 2015. That's when I actually premiered my first feature, Out of My Hand, which was also released by Ava's Array, thankfully. And it was a wonderful experience to meet, you know, so many filmmakers from around the world. But I couldn't make the best out of it as much as I wished, because I was also premiering my feature, and then, you know, I was kind of busy with that. But you know, it hasn't been easy, you know, after that to make my, you know, second feature. It took me 5 years because of the, you know, subject matters, and then the difficulty of, you know, financing and finding cast, and then, you know, do the right thing with the film. You know, like I'm still struggling. I don't see myself as an established filmmaker or something. I mean, you know, I'm still, you know, doing my best to make the, you know, best film possible, and then trying to make it, you know, as wide audience as possible. But as far as the dreams, there are so many problems around the world, and then but I'm just like I say in the previous question, I'm just trying to do the best I can with as a filmmaker. I'm there are, of course, I'm just like everyone else, I'm asked some like political questions and social issues on things about social issues and everything, and I have something to say on those issues, but at the same time, first and foremost, I'm a filmmaker, so I'm not a politician, and then I chose to be that because I believe in the power of the art, and I believe that's filmmakers and artists can do something that politicians can never do. And so I'm eager and then inspired to do the best, do something for a better world. But at the same time, I want to make something beautiful. And I guess, and then my dream, I guess, is, for to contribute to a better place for all of us. That's, of course, that's, one thing to, shine a light on the underrepresented, communities, and or talk about some issue that no one else is talking about, but but also to really make something to connect all of us instead of creating divides, and then hopefully I stay inspired to keep making something, so I feel like I'm being a part of whole world to, and then trying for a better place for all of us.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. Heperi?
I think actually my first experience at Berlinale was in 2013 as well. And actually that might have been the first time I ever met you, Elle-Máijá, because I was working as a film archivist at that time. And there was a program of archival New Zealand films that screened at Berlinale that year. And so to be able to come back and screen my own film there, it's amazing. The funny thing is, I mean, as you can see where I am, it's a hot, sunny summer's day, and then I travel halfway around the world to Berlinale, and it's winter, the heart of winter. The days are short. It's snowing. It's really cold. So there's that inherent shock that just comes with that, and then as well as being involved in releasing a film, which is an emotional journey in and of itself, and seeing a lot of new content that can be emotionally challenging. So it's always this roller coaster of feelings when I think of that time in that festival, which I really, really love. And it's also challenging in one respect, but it's also really lovely. Now, when it comes to dreaming, I think, we've talked about there is that feeling of kind of being constrained and sometimes even defined by the political elements of the work and of the territory that you deal with when you're dealing with minority stories, with Indigenous stories, and on top of that, you also have to just deal with the politics of the film industry internally in terms of the intellectual property ownership of your projects, of your stories. Signing over your family stories to a production company puts you in a very submissive position. And I was very lucky to be working with people who I trusted. And so, but, I know, and I've heard so many horror stories about people who are put in that position in terms of, having other people own or turning your life story, your family story, the story of your loved ones into a commodity of intellectual property that is then owned by a company is very confronting. And then on top of that, dealing with your own contracting, as a filmmaker working as an independent contractor, it's crazy. And like, I guess one of my dreams, and it's a very simple dream, is I'd love to be put in the position in my life where I could just tell a story and make a film for the pleasure and the sake of just telling the story. I think that would be very liberating. And I think, that you can do that and also carry that responsibilities that we talked about in a way that, that is universal. Because I think there are things, although we are from different cultures, what unites us all today in the Zoom and around the world, and I'm sure with all the travels that we've all done respectively with our work, there are core human feelings and emotions that we tap into through our work. and those can transcend those cultural barriers. And to me, that is the sweet spot. That is the beautiful place that I think of and that I dream about, and that makes me want to tell stories and inspires me to be a filmmaker. And that's the thing that really keeps me going.
Yes. You know, the thing that's so beautiful about those two questions is that there are threads running through all of your answers that, you know, really connect us all. You know, in the first question about responsibility and joy, when we think about identity and, you know, the politics around our image making and our art practice. And then also what our dreams are. It is to be somewhat free of those. So we embrace the responsibility and not as a responsibility. This is where I think our natural interests are. We want to comment on, we feel like we might need to address these things. If not us, who will, right? And so we know that so often we're working in these vacuums, but then on the other hand, so much about the answers about dreams have to do with freedom from that. For me, that kind of duality also exists. And the thing that really helps me bridge the gap is a sense of community, right? Community is what can free you from feeling like talking about these issues is having your hands behind your back, right? Because you're doing it out of a joy for community and connection, but then also community pushes you forward because you understand that we're so much more than the way that we're identified. And so I want to ask you a little bit about community building, which is a lot of what we try to do here with Array, between creating community around your films, right? Creating community between filmmakers. You know, you all are Array filmmakers, and that is a community of filmmakers that includes a lot of people from all around the world at this point that will continue to grow. So I just wanted you to address the sense of community, both in your own work, the way that that comes through, the way that you've conjured community around your work, and also your feelings about being a part of the Array community. You know, you all are connected to a Black woman from Compton, California in the United States. Film did that, right? Our love of film, my love of your films, your trust of your films to us. And so I think it's very special. I think it's very rare. So I just wanted to a little freestyle roundabout about what community means to the work, your film specifically, and what the Array community might mean to you.
Community is interesting because, you know, I have my community here in New Zealand and my family, and the people who are very close to me known me since I was a baby. But then I feel like I'm also part of a wider community that is international, and it includes the people in the Zoom and many, many others. And it's funny because there is a duality in that as well. I think in sharing stories, you know, particularly when you are working within the framework of being here in New Zealand, you know, Maori are a minority, maybe 11% of the population. Then when you extrapolate it to the world, we're microscopic minority. The really amazing thing about community is the sense of belonging that it gives you, regardless of your background, regardless of how, how niche your culture of origin may be to the wider world. You know, community gives you that feeling of comfort, that feeling of safety, of being at home regardless of where you were and where you are. And there are certain things, I mean, when you're exposing issues, when you're dealing with political issues in your own country, you can feel like a minority. You can feel like, you know, the perceptions and the opinions of people about your work, about the way that you live your life, the things that you believe are right, are marginalized. And what's beautiful about this community, about this international community, is you can take those issues outside of the context of your home country, and you can present them in a more, maybe a more neutral, maybe a more objective space, and have people who, you know, who don't get caught up in those same things that, you know, that are inherent from where you're from, and view them in a much more objective way, and maybe connect to you without some of the biases that come with being from a certain place, or, you know, being part of the other group, the dominant group within a culture or within the nation. And that I know, like, that has given me and a lot of my friends within the industry who aren't just, you know, from here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but from Indigenous communities all around the world. We really savor those times to get together and to collaborate in forums that allow us to do that. And we only get to do that maybe, you know, once or twice a year at different film festivals, or now, you know, over Zoom and you know, avenues such as this. But those are kind of the things, those gatherings are the kinds of things that really, I find, fuel my creativity and fuel my motivation and desire to tell more stories from my perspective and to champion more storytellers from, you know, Indigenous communities.
More kinds of places. Great answer. We're running out of time, but I do want to get your answers to this. Elle-Máijá and Takeshi, what are your thoughts about community and the Array community, the larger community around your films?
Well, yeah, I just want to echo what Heperi said. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to belong to a community. I think as a Blackfoot and Sami person, you know, it's beautiful to belong to both of those communities and to know that I come from a people and a place, but also the Indigenous film community is such a wonderfully rich and diverse group of people from all over the place, and I wouldn't be where I am as a filmmaker if it wasn't for that community uplifting and supporting and guiding and mentoring me. And then in terms of the Array community, it's I have to say, like, when we made The Body Remembers When the World Broke Open, it was about 2 Indigenous women from East Vancouver here in Canada, and we got so many rejections in terms of distributors, and we kind of thought, well, you know, like, nobody's going to want to see this beyond our tiny little community here in Canada, the Indigenous film community here. But then for some reason, it was placed in front of your eyes, Ava, and you picked it up and decided to, you know, champion our film. And that was such a profound moment for me as an Indigenous filmmaker to know that there is a place for Indigenous stories more broadly out there in the world, and to know that it's being supported by a company like Array was just, yeah, it was very, very profound. And then on the topic of dreaming, when we visited the Array campus, we happened to come during a staff meeting, and there was just like this. We walked into a room and there were all of these like beautiful, strong Black women gathering and talking about films, and I was just so moved by that moment, because it felt like, wow, maybe this is something that we can have too as Indigenous filmmakers, to have a space like that where we have the resources and the support necessary to keep building towards a future where yeah, we can make films that we can only dream about right now.
Well, our dreams are going to come true. We're going to make it happen. What about you, Takeshi?
Well, I go quickly, but I haven't been to LA campus, by the way, so I'm jealous of you.
You are our longest running filmmaker, Takeshi. We've distributed 2 of your films because you never come. You never come see us.
Well, I always wanted to go, but you know, I wasn't invited. Well, anyway.
Getting you over there. I'm flying you over, Takeshi.
Okay, I'm on. Well, communities, well, you know, as like someone says, you know, every film takes a village to make, you know, and you know, like I think, you know, all you know, we as a filmmakers, you know, we need, you know, like-minded people and collaborators, you know, to make, you know, to something, and then share the vision, and you know, that's a, you know, every time it's a challenge, you know, like I'm, you know, building a small group of people that, you know, I trust as collaborators, and I can share, you know, the greater values with, but at the same time, you know, like, and then there are, you know, new people and new collaborators in each film. So, and, you know, of course, you know, like as a community, you know, there's so much more, you know, we can do, you know, instead of as an individual. And you know, and one of the ways I feel like to find, you know, like-minded people, and then, you know, true collaborators is a place like this, you know, like at the film festival, or, you know, Berlinale and Talents, alumni, and then, and you know, like, because we need more people, you know, like we are always a shortage of, you know, filmmakers and then like-minded, you know, collaborators to do a bigger thing and then to create a bigger movement. And I'm so thankful to be a part of Array community, because, you know, Ava, you are the front runner of, you know, shining light on underrepresented people, and then, you know, like to, you know, bringing the place to, bringing the world to a better place. And I'm so thankful to be a part of it. And then also you know, so inspired by you and all the films who are, you know, that are, you know, released by Array. And that's, you know, because sometimes sometimes it can be a dark process to, you know, try to make a difficult film, and, you know, like having all those, you know, challenges and everything. But, you know, seeing other films, you know, being made and then released by, you know, someone like you is really encouraging. And then, you know, being, you know, that's really the power of community that, you know, that can, you know, really, you know, keeps me going. So, and we all of us need that.
We all need it. I think the things we've said here today are that we acknowledge the burden of dealing with identity and politics and culture within the work, but the joy within it as well, and that it's okay to juggle both of those, and to interrogate them and to talk about them. And that inserted within that, we have to dream. We have to push past the things that we're told we can and cannot do. And, you know, those dreams may be within the work, the kinds of films we want to make, but I'm hearing a lot from you all about the way you want to make the films, which is also something that's inherent in our filmmaking. It's the process, it's the craft of it, and it's the architecture around the films. And then the other thing is that, you know, part of what can help you get through that is community. And, you know, it can be the community of your own film set. It could be the community of filmmakers that are culturally aligned, politically aligned, geographically aligned, but it also can be through spaces like Berlinale. It could be like spaces like Array, and encouraging filmmakers who are watching, no matter how long you've been making films, or if you've not made one yet, you gotta find your community. You gotta find some support so you're not in it alone, because like Takeshi says, it can get dark. But there's also so much light there when you're able to bounce things off of other people and feel the support. So this is really, you know, worth gathering for, to say these things out loud and say them to each other. And I just want to thank you all three of you, for entrusting Array with your babies. You know, these films come from you. They're a part of you. They have your name on it, and they will live on after we're all gone. These films will do that. And so thank you for letting us be a part of it. It means a lot to us. And just thank you. I'm so happy we were able to convene, that we were invited to come together here. And I can't wait for the day we're all in the same place in real life. So we know we can get Elle-Máijá. Heperi's gonna be coming from a long way. I mean, everyone's coming from a long way, but I think it'd be worth the trip. Takeshi, you're gonna love it. Once you get there, it's gonna be like black girl magic, right? All around you. You're gonna have a good time.
I can't wait.
We're gonna give you lots of hugs and smiles and love, but in the meantime, we give it to you all from a distance. Thank you so much for gathering today, and I'll see you again very soon, I hope.
I'm not muted. Hey back, everyone. Once again, a warm welcome and hello from my side. I'm very honored to navigate through our upcoming conversation. And before I do so, I want to say another big thank you and a big shout out to Ava DuVernay for the inspiring conversation that we just heard. And then welcome once again, Heperi, Elle-Máijá, and Takeshi. The audience has just met you and gotten to know you a little bit, and we're super glad to have you live with us today as well. And before we delve into the actual talk, I'd very much like to start off with sharing clips that you all chose from your work, representative for process, for dreams, for visions. And I'd like to start with the very first clip from Happy Mita's film, Merata, How Mom Decolonialized the Screen.
Heperi's research. This is just information about Foot soldiers.
Rami Maoris use patus.
Well, Maoris made an art of the club, and they made them out of greenstone and whalebone and a sort of grey stone.
My mother once said, "What you see when you look at an archival film are resurrections taking place. A past life lives again, and something from the heart and the spirit responds."
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
What's your name?
Heperi.
Heperi.
Mita.
Ah, you must be a famous relative. Who's your mum?
Mita. Mita.
Ah, see, son of the master.
Although my mum is now gone, as an archivist, she shows me things in every frame, and I get to feel her presence again.
How big was the biggest foot soldier army in the world?
To my knowledge, the Persian army was huge and comprised mainly of foot soldiers. Foot soldiers don't have a very high status, but they have to be very brave and very determined to keep fighting a war.
O tana waiata, pērā me te tangi a riroriro. Engari, ko ngā mahi, pērā me te kuri.
One of my primary goals is to decolonize the screen and to indigenize a lot of what we see up there.
For me, it is blood for blood. Utu.
At the start, people used to look at me, you know, in utter disbelief when I talked about filming. And I think it was because there are not only no Maori filmmakers in the country, but the fact that I was also a woman.
Black women of this country, Maori and Polynesian women, are the most deprived and repressed sections of the peoples of this country.
I thought we were here to talk about right and flats, not harp on about women's rights.
You enough, Manny. We all know how you treat women.
I always have this desire to do things not well, but as brilliantly as possible. Once the work shows that you're capable of doing something, then all the other prejudices about race and sex may perhaps fall away.
So that's a little bit of information to start out Heperi's research.
Thank you very much for sharing those moving 2 minutes from even more moving feature of you. Before we see the second clip, maybe you want to share just in 2 sentences why you chose that particular excerpt of the film for you as representative for your process and how it is related to dreams for you.
I think, well, part of that was that there's a pretty good summary of my film. It's actually the opening scene, but I mean, how it is related to dreams as well as, you know, dreams are an interesting place. And in that clip, I talk about, you know, revisiting with my mum through the films after she had passed away. And I find that dreams are a space where also resurrections take place as well. You know, you dream about people who you've lost long after they've gone, and it takes you emotionally to a place that nothing else can really take you to in the physical world. And so I really felt that feeling was really captured by my experience going through archival film, and the only other place that I've really felt that is in my dreams.
It's quite beautiful as you really transcend this physical realm of time and space, and also very much connect to your mom's actual dreams that have manifested and how you depict them. But let's go into that further a little bit later. I'd very much like to share with you now a clip from Elle-Máijá Tailfeathers' film, The Body Remembers When the World Broke Open.
Just grab. Do you want me to call the police? No? No? Do you know that guy? It's my boyfriend. It's just, do you wanna maybe just like walk with me for a bit? Yeah? Come on. It's okay. Come on. Do you live around here? No. It's all right. Let's maybe move a little faster, okay? Come on, honey. It's okay. I got you. Come on. You okay? You're bleeding. Do you think maybe I should call an ambulance? No? No? Okay. Oh. Are you sure you don't want to go to the police? Something deaf or something? Sorry. Look, my place is just around the corner. Do you want to come inside? I don't think he's behind us, but I think we should keep moving. Do you want to come inside? Yeah? Okay. We're almost there. Gotcha. Okay. Doing okay? All right, watch your step here, eh? The steps, eh? Okay, just up here, come on in.
Thank you, Elle-Máijá. It is actually the scene where your two protagonists first meet that you shared with us, and it's very intense and it's very also unsettling in a way. And for me, there was a lot of connection to hopes and maybe dreams of how things could turn out or not turn out that I found in the scene. But before I start interpreting, maybe you want to say why you chose that particular scene.
Well, yeah, for that reason, it's the moment where these two women connect for the first time, and the film is inspired by an experience that I had in the same neighborhood that we shot the film, in the same neighborhood that I live, and that scene represents this moment when these two women meet and they start this journey together. And for me, it's also a really powerful reminder of what we managed to accomplish in bringing that story to the screen, and being able to tell a story in real time, and to work in such a technically challenging way, but also tell a simple story that had such profound meaning to me. And then in terms of dreaming, you know, I feel like dream and memory are very closely connected, and this is a memory that stuck with me for years, and I kind of dreamed about being able to bring it to the screen in an ethical way. And yeah, so that moment represents a catalyst for all of that work and all of that dreaming that happened before the cameras ever rolled.
So you also talk about a very personal interconnection of memories and dreams that then manifest in your work. Thank you for letting us in on that. Takeshi, let's see something from your featured film, Ainu Mosir, and then talk about it, please. Takeshi, thank you for the clip. Would you let us in on how and why you chose that very particular scene where we have your protagonist peeking outside the window, seeing what's happening outside and trying to connect or maybe not connect to what he sees?
Right. So the film Ainu Mosir is about coming of age story of this indigenous Ainu boy who, you know, like you say, who is watching the dance from his room. So as a Japanese filmmaker making a film about Ainu, you know, like I was very careful and then cautious about, you know, how to, you know, what kind of approach I take as far as the process. And then the one I chose was to bring reality, as much reality possible into the film, and then incorporate who they actually are into the story. So the result was like a hybrid film, you know, with both like, you know, documentary and fiction aspect. And this scene really is kind of like a clear example of that, like mixing the documentary and fiction. So that festival is an actual festival that happens in the town where we shot the movie every year. So everything else except the scene in the room of the boy is a documentary. And then that's the only scene we shot with 2 cameras in the entire film. And then later we shot him, the boy, in his room, like looking at the dance from his room, and then, you know, put it together in the editing room. And then also you also connect to the theme of dream, because, you know, in the story he's looking at the man who is dancing, you know, in front of the crowd, and then imagining, you know, where he might be, you know, in the trajectory of his life, because he's, you know, he's in the process of confronting his roots, and then trying to find an answer for what kind of life, and then what kind of relationship he want to have with his roots. So that I see that imagination, and then like how, projection, of your life is also very, very connected to like dreaming.
I find it very interesting because it really has this multifaceted approach to gaze and perspective on the very particular scene. You see the performance, you see the spectators from the outside, and then you have his very personal gaze and also look at what he's seeing. Thank you for sharing all those clips with us. I really recommend everyone to try to find the possibility to see the entire works. All of your films come from a very personal and intimate space. You're either related to family. Elle-Máijá, you just shared that it was a very personal memory that was inspirational for your feature. And Takeshi, you said you spent a lot of time there, and it's also connected to Hokkaido, where you grew up. So I'm very interested in the interconnection of memory and then also vision. So you go back, you reflect upon what has happened, and then you anticipate an idea of future. And I was wondering how does that impact your process, coming like from research, but then also the entire moment of shooting and finding a community around your film. Maybe you want to start, Heperi.
I think for me personally, part of it is, working through your own emotions that come from these places, either feelings of intense nostalgia or feelings of a longing for something. And the further and further you get away from those memories, the harder and harder it becomes to recapture them and to recapture those feelings that you once had. And so for me, a lot of it was kind of chasing that and then putting that into the context where I could, when you see things through the eyes of innocence, or, your first experience with something, you never get to recapture that feeling ever again. And so for me, I think a lot of what I was doing in my work was trying to get back to that place. And now I think of things and I have the benefit of hindsight. I should have said this, I could have done this. But it's really different when you're just in the moment, and that moment is so alive to you. And so that's what I think, that connection between dreaming and memory is bringing that back to life, and having some of that wisdom that you have now and being able to apply it to that situation when you possibly didn't have that at the time.
It's very interesting because you in this very first opening scene, you're there as the archivist, and you're there actually researching the past through the material. And then in the talk with Ava, you said you're working as a writer. So it's also different roles that you take in the process of like recreating memories and manifesting visions. How does that inspire you, or how do you switch also in between the different approaches you take to storytelling?
I think, in terms of being an archivist, there's something really special about handling the physical element of film. And with film, I guess what's very different from digital is that the people who are photographed, the film captures their presence, the light that they, reflected on that day. And so there's a real strong connection into that. But of course, they're only images, and then you marry it with the sound, and then it becomes, like a photochemical process. But the underlying thing that comes out of that is the story of that time, or your memory of that time. And for me, writing is that element of it. It's actually that emotional part of it. It's the articulation of the feelings, or the demonstration of those feelings that is evoked by something you know, like the handling of an archival film, like the handling of an old photo album, of that nostalgia. And so there's a connection to them, but writing is kind of, for me, it's not the stripping of those things per se, because it's still very much alive in the writing, but it's I guess it's like the package that the emotion is delivered to other people, and it's the way that you connect to other people, and that, you know, if I look through an old family photo album, that's a very personal thing to me. But if I start communicating the way I felt on that day, you know, the people around me and my relationships with them and how they've impacted me to become the person who I am, that's when it becomes the story.
Yeah, it's interesting because what you say is also extracting a certain thing and then turning it into something else. That's actually also what you did, Elle-Máijá. You said you were actually reflecting upon a memory and like drawing inspiration from that very personal place and then fictionalizing it. And for you, you also have multiple roles as an actor, as a writer, as a director. And yeah, I was wondering if you could maybe go into that a little bit more, and how does this vision and this bringing together of like the past and a vision of the future inspire your process?
Well, there was so much to consider. The film is about two Indigenous women from very different lived experiences encountering each other on the street. One of them has fled from a domestic violence situation. And like one of the characters in the film, I ended up taking this young woman home with me and thinking that I could help her, and very quickly realized that I did not have the skill set or experience to do so. And that moment for me was very eye-opening, and I guess sort of a confrontation of my own privilege. And I learned so much from this young woman that day. I never saw her again, and I carried the story with me for years. I walked past her building on a regular basis because it's just a couple blocks from my house, and there was so much to consider ethically in terms of bringing a story to the screen that didn't just belong to me, it belonged to her as well. It was also her experience, and I of course can't speak for her or how she felt. And so we decided to fictionalize it. And I also, most of my experience as a director was in documentary prior to that film. I of course have worked as an actor for quite a long time, but it's a different skill set. And so I approached a good friend whose work I really admire. Her name's Kathleen Hepburn, and Kathleen and I co-wrote and co-directed. I really love the process of collaboration, and we shot the film on 16mm as a continuous take and had to build in 12 camera transitions, and so it was really technically challenging. It's something that, as far as we know, has never been done before in film. And so it was a wonderful experience to have a collaborator, to have someone who I could count on. And I feel like it only served to enrich the process. But behind the camera, it was also really important to think about narrative sovereignty and the Indigenous community that worked on the film. And in Canada, we have a great shortage of Indigenous people working in key technical positions, so camera, lighting, sound, all of those things. There are people who are experienced and talented in those fields, but there's not enough to be able to work on all of the films. And so we had to consider what it meant to tell this kind of story, and also try and build capacity within the Indigenous film community. And so we built in a number of things into the process. We had like an Indigenous youth mentorship project where we had young Indigenous people working in all of the key technical departments in a collaborative way with the head of each department. And we had to consider the fact that, in Canada, settlers, non-Indigenous people have a lot of unlearning to do. There's a lot of racial bias that exists. and genocide is ongoing in this country. And so we wanted to ensure that we weren't doing harm to the Indigenous people we were bringing onto our crew. And we wanted our non-Indigenous crew to understand the gravity of the story we were telling, and also the fact that, you know, we face violence on a daily basis as Indigenous people. So we did sort of like cultural competency, anti-oppression training for the whole crew before we started rolling. And I feel like it really set the tone for this like understanding of responsibility, but also respect and humility and just a sense of community on set. And we worked really hard to also kind of dismantle those toxic hierarchical forms of working that exist in the mainstream film industry. And I think Kathleen and I, both being women directors, we wanted to kind of like, you know, break down those structures that are so oppressive on set. So there was a lot to consider just in terms of the process and how to tell this story in an ethical way, and just to build a new way of working. And it was such a wonderful process, and I hope to use aspects of it on my next film.
Wow, that is quite amazing and very consequent. And it really shows how creating structural counter realities on set, as you say, and really deconstructing and pointing out hierarchies and biases can actually affect the come out and the project. And as you say, it's not about only promoting a message in the with the film itself, but it's also having an impact during the process and protecting your community and empowering your community by doing so. Thank you. Takeshi, you also went for a very hybrid version. As you said already, you use fictionalization, and then you have this very documentary elements. And as you say, it's very well reflected when you work with the documentary part that does also reflect, in a way, I felt, the reality of the place that you depict, because as this UNESCO, I think it's Intangible World Heritage Site, you have these visitors and you have this sometimes even weird intruding interactions of outsiders coming and also being insensitive again and again. But that's maybe already deep into the content. How is it for you? As you say, you come from the outside, you're not part of the community itself, you depict the community. What was important to you in telling this story? What was your inspiration and motivation in doing so? And how does it personally connect to you?
Right. So I'm born and raised in the same state, Hokkaido, although it's a different part of the Hokkaido where I grew up in, from where we shot the movie. But so Ainu people have been very much underrepresented in the Japanese society, and then there is a few narrative films made about them. But every time it was made, it was Japanese actors who were playing Ainu roles, which is not acceptable in today's standard. And so this film is supposed to be the first film about Ainu starring no-actor Ainu people. And then, so that was one of the big motivations for me to make this film, to update the representation of Ainu people in cinema. But even though I did have this kind of greater value that I believed in, to achieve through making this film, I was also, as I say, trying to be very careful how to approach making this film and how to portray them, because my goal was to reduce prejudice and discrimination against them, not to, of course, impose my preconceived notions on them. So again, the approach I took was to bring in as much documentary aspect, and then also invite these known actors in the process as much as possible. So after many trips to the town, and then build a relationship with them. First of all, the first thing for me to do was to learn about them, and that was the very first step. And then slowly I found this story, and what kind of story I can make with these people in this particular town. And then every time I have a new updated draft, I showed it to them, and then discuss the story with them. And even though I wrote all the lines and characters based on real people living in that town, I didn't ask them to memorize a line, but instead, to encourage them to improvise and then speak freely as much as possible. And then that way I could, again, instead of, putting my own ideas on them or, who they are, I try to be an instrument for their voices to be heard. And, like, of course, in the future, I, sincerely hope that there will be a film that about Ainu made by Ainu filmmaker. But today there isn't any for the moment. But I think we could make a small step forward for better representation and better future. But this is not, the end. Like we have to keep, working on it, and we have to make a progress. And at the end of the day, it's not for me to decide if this film could really achieve what I hope to achieve. But that I try my best, and then I hope to, keep doing my best.
Awesome. Thank you, Takeshi. Before I go on with my questions, I'd very much like to invite the talents to participate in the conversation, add with comments, questions, and maybe their dreams and visions. For doing so, raise your digital hands in the webinar, and the Berlinale team is gonna put you in the loop and make you appear on screen with us. Yeah, and before the first people come in, I'd like to connect to what you just said, the three of you actually, and that is how collaboration plays a very important role in the way we make films and we think about film. And if we take it further away from the actual process of shooting on your sets, and if we think about dreams and visions of the industry of cinema and film cultures globally and how we do collaborate. I mean, that's a very big and open question, but I'd be very much interested in what your big dreams for film cultures and cinemas are. Who wants to start? I can see smiles.
I don't mind. I don't mind. I think it actually kind of picks up from what Takeshi was saying. I mean, in New Zealand, for a long time, it was a very similar situation for the Ainu in that Maori were portrayed. We've got a long cinematic history, but it was always, in front of the camera as talent. And now we're getting into a place where there are more technicians, there are many more directors and producers making the work, and kind of, I guess one of the big dreams is getting to a place where there is full control over the production, and I think that's also one of the things that attracted me to Array, is that, Ava set up a program for minority voices to heard through distribution channels. And we don't really have the same kind of infrastructure here in New Zealand. We've got some successful small Māori production companies, but if you want to achieve something on an international level when it comes to a multi-million-dollar budget or that type of thing, there isn't a Māori production company that can currently offer that infrastructure. And you know, actually, and I don't even know if that's true. I think there are Maori productions that could do that. They just haven't been given those opportunities. And so for me, that is the dream, is for Maori ownership, not just, you know, behind the scenes, not just in front of the camera, but of the actual intellectual property itself, of the actual marketplace, actually going into the distribution conversation and having that full control from top to bottom, I think is one of the bigger dreams. And you know, and that is part of a collaboration. But you know, we've also collaborated for a long time, and I think I would really love to see just like a fully Maori production. And it doesn't have to be 100% crew Maori. It's just in terms of the actual ownership and authority over the narrative and where it goes.
Yeah, that relates a lot to what Elle-Máijá said about narrative sovereignty as well before. And I think it's important that you point out that it's actually not about simple representation, but actual ownership, and that there is a big difference in between the two of those. Elle-Máijá, may I ask you to take over?
Sure, yeah, I agree with everything that was just said. And I think another thing that I hope for or dream about is just having access to the resources we need to tell the types of stories that we're going to tell. Dennis Goulet's film Night Raiders, which is premiering at Berlinale this year, had the highest budget of any Indigenous film that's ever been made in Canada, which was really exciting and so cool to witness, you know, as being an actor on set. Dennis is a longtime friend and mentor, and it was just incredible to watch this Indigenous woman be able to make the kind of film she wanted to make with the resources that she needed to make that film. And further to that, it was a Canadian-New Zealand co-production. So it was this incredible collaboration between Canadian Indigenous people and Maori people from New Zealand. So there was this beautiful community on set. We had all these Maori folks up in Canada working with us, and it was, I can't really describe the feeling of having that sort of sense of community, like a global community, and finding a way to pool resources and to support each other in telling each other's stories. Obviously, you know, we're very different people. We come from different places. We have different customs and cultures and languages, but I think there's still like a core ethic of who we are as Indigenous peoples, and I hope to see more of that, more collaboration and more finding ways to support each other, but also being trusted with the resources necessary to tell the kinds of stories we want to tell, because for so long we've had to sort of fight for a tiny piece of the pie to tell, and then being forced to make films with next to nothing. And it's sort of like a way of setting us up for failure. So I really hope to see more of that, because there certainly isn't a lack of voices. There's a lack of opportunity for Indigenous people, BIPOC people, and, you know, marginalized voices and underrepresented voices as a whole. So yeah, those are things that I hope and dream about.
That's a crucial point that you talk about. We have to stop marginalization by funding, and I think it's a market, and we have to see it as such, and we have to see the hierarchies and also power dynamics that actually come from the distribution of resources. So I think that's a very, very important point. Takeshi, we have a talent on screen who's going to share a question, but before they do so, yeah, what are your dreams for the industry?
Well, there are many, but I guess I just, you know, talk about the representation, because since that's the kind of main topic. I mean, of course, even like Asian people or Japanese people are still misrepresented in cinema, I think. And then, you know, these are changing a bit by bit. Like, you know, at the Golden Globe this year, there are huge wins by Chloe Zhao and Isaac Chan. And that's amazing news. And then that's gonna, I think, influence many productions, you know, going forward. But I think each and every one of us in the different situation, trying our best to again, you know, make a better place, you know, and then for the future generation. And then I'm hoping to contribute to that. But in the end, you know, what we are, I think, the ideal place is that, you know, where like Heperi mentioned in the previous conversation, that where we don't have to really talk so much about it, like that, that we are telling stories sincerely, and then we are, telling story as humans, and then we are, experiencing the story as humans, and then we just, focus on more beauty in it, and then, grow compassion on each other. And I think we are still very far away from it. And then there are many problems to tackle on to bring us closer to that situation. But so I guess my dream is to be able to have a space for everyone that to be able to comfortably share their stories.
Thank you. We have a question from a talent. Would you be so kind and introduce yourself and then share your comment, question, or dream?
Hello, everyone. This is Tathagata Ghosh. I'm from Kolkata, India. First of all, thank you so much for the inspiring session. I mean, learning so much from you all. It's really amazing. My question is to Heperi, actually. I absolutely loved what I saw of the little piece that you shared, and it's so heart-wrenching, heartwarming. And as someone, as a filmmaker who also likes to tell personal stories, especially losing a parent at an early age in life, I wanted to ask you that when you were making the film, which we just saw, the clip that we just saw from your film, and essentially such a personal story, when you are working on it, suppose when you are editing it, when you are structuring it, sometimes you need to distance yourself a little and see from the point of view of a filmmaker. How do you distance yourself from a narrative like that? How do you make sure that you don't get too attached to sometimes maybe get a little maybe get self or overindulgent, if that's the word I may use, so that it doesn't really interfere with the cinematic language? How do you do that when you're seeing the film, when you're editing it, or you're writing it? How are you making sure that you maintain that distance as a viewer, so that the film is really engaging and gets connected? How do you balance that? So thank you so much. That's what I ask.
Thank you very much for your question, Heperi. I'll pass it on to you.
Yes, that was a very, very challenging aspect, and I mean, within the process itself, was also very challenging. I had to involve my family a lot, because the angle of the film is a lot of us kids, my mother's children's reflections and experiences of having a mother like her. So I spent a lot of time with my family doing that, and talking to them about it, and convincing them to share some of their intimate and private memories. And so the challenge was, how do we get something that is so personal to be accessible for a wider audience? And the easiest and quickest answer that I could give you is having actually a lot of time in the edit, because that gave me the room and the space to kind of get over myself and to view it as a story. I mean, I almost have to use the analogy of part of it is almost like being a doctor. You look at it like you're treating a symptom in terms of the narrative structure of the thing. You're looking at, how does this work as a narrative, as opposed to getting wrapped up in the emotion of the work. The other thing that was really helpful is I had people around me who I really, really trusted. And those were people who knew my family intimately, but those were also people who lived overseas, friends of mine that I had made who didn't even know who my mother really was. But I felt comfortable, sharing the early cuts with them and getting their feedback and bringing their thoughts on board. And these were people who didn't even they knew that I had Maori heritage, but they didn't know even what that culture was, So yeah, it was about picking and choosing the people who I trusted to give me feedback from many different perspectives, but also having the time in the edit for me to distance myself appropriately from the raw emotion of the whole thing. And that was really hard in my experience too, because you know, not only was I dealing, you know, kind of with the grief of my mum, who at that point had been passed away for many years, but actually in the production process, my brother, who I interviewed extensively, he also passed away. And kind of a, you know, in a strange way, when you're dealing with something so personal on that level, it really helps, actually. It really helped me, and it really helped my siblings as well. I feel comfortable saying this, kind of work through some of those feelings and to look at things a little bit more, I don't know if objectively is the right word, but just, yeah, to just work through those emotions. So even, you know, even applying that lens of accessing these stories as a documentarian, as a filmmaker, even that helped kind of give me not just the distance I needed, but a purpose to tell the story. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Heperi. It actually does a lot. It's and it's really fascinating how you manage, on the one hand, to have this step back objectivity, if you want to say so, and then still be very, very honest and sincere in communicating your emotions in the film, even, you know, in the voiceover, even in this short clip that we shared, that you shared with us. It's very present, and you really show this deep connection that you have to the story, obviously, and to your mom. I'm so sorry, but we have to wrap up the session. It's lovely to talk about dreams and visions for the industry, and I think we could exchange for a long, long time going on. It's really great to hear that we all share the idea of ownership, of sovereignty, of redistribution of resources, and to then be able to, as you said, Takeshi, and as you said, Heperi in the talk with Ava, to tell stories for the pleasure of telling stories and to share dreams because they might be surreal dreams that we just want to delve into. Thank you so much for all the insights, for sharing your work, for getting up early, for staying up late, and for being with us. And have a beautiful Berlinale. And I hope to meet you in person, maybe in Berlin, maybe somewhere else soon. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.